Hello, this is the Insurance Perspectives podcast presented by HawkSoft. And on today's final episode of Season 3, we're thrilled to bring you a presentation from the 2025 HawkSoft User Group National Conference. Two members of HawkSoft's executive team, Paul Hawkins and Rushang Shah, spoke on developing company culture. They share the foundational set of questions that HawkSoft asks their leaders and employees, and challenge you to create your own set of questions to create a vibrant, enduring company culture. We hope you enjoy the discussion, and be sure to follow the podcast on Apple and Spotify, and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. We will return next month on August 19th with a series of podcasts featuring other content from the 2025 HUG National Conference. Enjoy your summer, and thank you for being here.
Welcome. The purpose of this session is to share a little bit of insight with you guys on how HawkSoft for 30 years, this is our 30-year milestone. For 30 years, we started from 2 people and have grown to over 170 employees. But it's not about that growth necessarily. It's about that growth and maintaining a core set of values and culture through that growth. And we're a little bit unique as a company in that we've chosen not to be like some of the other players in our industry. And what I mean by that is most companies, by the time they hit year 7, 10, 15 at most, there's usually some form of equity that comes in, or there's an acquisition that takes place. That's not right or wrong. It's just a choice that they've made, right? What the right choice depends on what the goals of the company are. So we're not here to litigate that. But HawkSoft has made a conscious decision not to go down that path because that gives us flexibility to maintain the original values and the culture that started the company. Anytime you have another form of equity come in or anytime you have an acquisition, we've seen that story play out where things change. Sometimes it's no longer about the employees, it's no longer about the customers, and it's more about the shareholders at that point. We've seen that story.
I get probably 3 or 4 emails and 2 phone calls every week of people either wanting to invest in us or wanting to buy us. And I go like, go away. My grandchildren are now involved. This is going to be their company.
Thank you.
And yeah. And and it's funny because, you talk about how do we start? And I worked for some really bad companies, some bad bosses over the years, and I never wanted my children and my grandchildren to have to punch somebody else's clock.
Yep.
And to put up with that. I had an owner that said that he owned me. I mean, he said, "I own you." I was the warehouse manager, and he fired 17 people on Christmas Eve because he thought that they would start those were the people in the company that would start a union. And I'm going like, man, he just devalued people so badly. But I'm thankful that I worked there and had that experience because I want to do just the opposite. And that's my whole reason of doing what I'm doing.
And then those of us that work for HawkSoft, we've been fortunate to listen to some of these stories. Paul's sharing like a snippet, but it really puts into perspective, sometimes culture seems like wordplay, right? It's like words on a wall. You refer to them when you're walking by the wall maybe, or someone's visiting the office. What we're trying to share in this session is how you can turn that into more than just words on a wall. And part of this session is a working session. So I have a QR code here. I'll give you the URL and I'll show you the QR code. As we step through each question that helped HawkSoft define our culture, you guys can brainstorm as well and answer those questions for your own agency. Every organization's culture has to be different, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're not here to give you our culture. We're here to show you how we developed our culture and how help you develop your culture because you are different. Each one of you are different. Each one of you are individual, and so many of you are families and just like we are. but your reason for being, your reason for what you do every day, each one of you is going to be different.
It has to be, because it has to be genuine to you guys, right? And that's our goal in this session. So I'm gonna just pass this around. If you want to take a quick picture, load it on your phone. Please don't answer the questions yet. We will, as we talk through them, I'll cue you guys on when to go in and answer. To kick things off, does anyone have a common approach of disseminating your company culture anytime, let's say, someone new is hired? Does anyone have a systematic way of sharing that culture with new hires? Systematic being the keyword, yes.
We have our core values, so they'll sit down with Brent and Aaron and kind of just walk through and explain kind of how we work with people.
That's awesome. And who does that explanation?
The owners.
Okay, awesome.
That's fantastic.
We do something different, don't we?
Yeah, we actually have the whole executive team. This is probably our most expensive meeting that we have in the company. The whole executive team sits in front of, I thought of this the last time because we only had, 2 new employees, and we had, 10, 11 people in the executive team, and they probably felt a little overwhelmed, maybe a little intimidated. I hope not. By the time they got done, I don't think they did. But we have them, and we go through our core values, and we explain ourselves why we do what we do. And I think that's important to get everybody on the right page to start with. They know how you think and how you expect them to not just do, but what you expect them to think and how you expect them to do. Feel.
It has a dramatic impact doing something like that with every single new hire, especially what Paul's saying. A lot of times we'll have 2 people in the room that are not the executive team. The impact that has on those two new hires is so dramatic because they understand that in our case, there's 10 executives in that room. We are taking time, like you said, it's the most expensive meeting. We are taking our time to commit to these core values and explain why they matter to us just for sometimes 1 or 2 employees. That sets the stage for every new employee on these matter. And the way we run that meeting is also a little bit different. We have every executive read one of the core values and explain in their own words what that means to them or how they've seen it exemplified by other employees in the company. So not only are we talking about the theoretical, we're actually talking about the practical. Every new hire at HawkSoft. So we call that, these questions that we're gonna drive through and have you guys brainstorm, we call, in our company, we call that the HawkSoft playbook. And that playbook is something we go over with every new hire. And honestly, we're now doing it with existing employees too. It's some employees that have been with us for 20, 25 years. We're having them come back and sit through a new employee hire to refresh a lot of these things. Culture, anyone have a definition or ideas on how they define corporate culture or any sort of culture? Go ahead. What values matter, how you treat people, how you interact with people. Perfect.
I tell people that we live by our core values. We hire and fire by our core values. And we use our core values to answer all of our questions.
We at HawkSoft, we define culture as a group of people repeating the same set of behaviors. A group of people repeating the same set of behaviors. And where this manifests itself, a lot of times we definitely hear it. We have the privilege of hearing it when we go to trade shows or industry events. We hear it from prospects that are approaching HawkSoft, thinking about us, thinking about switching to us. We hear it from customers that visit our booth. But the common denominator, regardless of any event we go to, is, hey, your people are amazing. And it's not one person that they're talking about. It's talking about culture. It's talking about repeated behaviors by a group of people. So the last 3 interactions, HawkSoft, we can stand behind this fact that they turned out excellent for you. And when we hear that feedback from people that your people are amazing, that's what they're referring to. It's when I talked to person A at HawkSoft, it was an excellent experience. When I talked to person B at HawkSoft, I got the same excellent experience. That consistency and repeated behaviors is how we define culture. It's phenomenal how we've able to maintain that over time. So one of the stepping stones is we encourage every organization to define what culture means to you, just like this gentleman said, or just like. If you want now, go into the first question on the form, and Kenny has a QR code for those that just stepped in. And if you want, just brainstorm your own definition of what culture is. What's going to happen at the end of this form is when you hit submit, it'll ask you for your email, and all your notes will be emailed back to you. So all this brainstorming that you're doing, it'll be summarized back to you. One of the most important questions we ask in our playbook is, why do we exist as a company? Fundamental question, why do we exist? You have the best answer for this.
Well, you know, in fact, I already kind of answered it. I told you that I didn't want my children and my grandchildren to punch somebody else's clock and to have to put up with the same things that I did, because there's so much culture out there that is just the opposite of what we believe in, and I didn't want them to go through it. So my thing as CEO, people, in fact, I was in Minnesota the other day, a while back, and I was talking to a dear friend of mine, owns a large agency on the north side of Oakwood Insurance. And he says, Paul, he asked me a very pointed question. What is, as CEO, what is your most important job? I said, my most important job is to grow my people. And he says, I like that. Why is that your most important job? I says, because if I can grow my people and my people feel safe, they feel valued, guess what? My customers are going to be happy, because they're going to take care of my customers because I'm taking care of them. You know, a lot of people get it turned around. They think financial, it's got to be about the dollars. And that's why I don't have shareholders. That's why I don't sell out to anybody else, because I don't want to owe them allegiance. I want my allegiance to go to my employees and my customers, because you guys are the most important. We don't, even on the executive team.
We don't talk about it.
We don't talk about the finances to the executive team. We talk about our core values, how we're going to do something. That's the most important thing.
And that's a really important distinction. We have a weekly executive meeting. That's separate than our board meeting. I would say in both of those meetings, financials are an outcome to certain activities and focus items. It's not something that you can directly work on. It's an outcome it's a result of something. We don't bring up financials in these meetings. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the levers that lead to results. So investing in people. What did you notice about that description about why we exist? There's not a single mention of insurance. There's not a single mention of software. We're not talking about what we sell to sustain ourselves financially. We're talking about what our mission is. And that's a top that I'll spin in front of you guys for you to think about, is this generation of workers, this generation of employees are looking for something more than what you sell. They're looking for a purpose. They're looking for a company that can play a role in the arc of their life. And so why we exist, don't limit it to just what you're selling. That's an artifact of a higher purpose. What is that deeper purpose? You know, sometimes growth, an individual's growth, may mean that they've outgrown our company. That's perfectly okay with us. We've had many situations where people, to get to the next level, our company may not be the right company for them, but we will still treat them like the loving employees that they are and help them find that next lily pad for them to jump to.
You know, and one of the results of that was we had a customer that jumped ship, if you will,
Yeah.
and got their dream job, okay? But then they brought other people to HawkSoft.
So with that type of purpose for HawkSoft to grow people, our role then changes significantly. Yes, we're selling software, but really our role is to surround them wherever they are in the arc of their career with the opportunities for them to get to the next stage. That could mean mentorship. That could mean something as simple as tools or software to help them get there. That could mean role models. We move people around the bus within the company many times. In fact, most of our product owners have come from product support. Mm-hmm. They understand.
Well, not just our product owners, but also our implementation consultants.
Yeah.
Most of them have come from product support because they learn the culture, they learn and they thrive, and they get an opportunity to move up.
Yep. We have multiple paths for them. So even within the same bus, and like I said, if growth means moving outside of that bus, that's perfectly fine. We're committed to the individual. So any other comments on why we exist? Anyone want to share? No? Okay. Next is, how do we behave? So again, these are all questions in our playbook. How do we as an organization behave? One of the things I think any entity needs, whether it's religious, whether it's a business, whether it's a family, think of your family as an organization, a kind of organization, is role models.
For a family, it might be Grandpa Jones.
It could be, if Grandpa Jones is.
Yeah, we have one in our family like that, and that we have a couple. We have a grandpa and a great grandma, because our culture and our family is very musical, and so great grandma is a icon for some of my granddaughters and stuff in music.
We've chosen 4 people. You can choose any 4 or 5, as many as you want. But the reason real examples are important is otherwise it becomes a theoretical exercise. It's hard to attach yourself to theory. It's easy to attach to a role model. So we've chosen 4 that matter to us. So the first one is Thomas Edison. We want to behave like someone who failed so many times before they succeeded to discover electricity light bulb. Every failure wasn't a failure to him. It was one step closer to success. We want to indoctrinate that type of mindset, the growth mindset, in our employees.
We don't fix something because it's broke. Even if it's not broke, we still want to fix it. Yep. We want to make it better. We want to innovate. And that's where our innovation comes in.
And that's the number one flaw, I think, of success, is you become complacent. So even if it's not broken, is there a better way to improve that workflow? Like, part of the reason we're struggling, I'll be honest right now, with migrating people from HawkSoft Legacy 5 to 6 is we got so good in HawkSoft 5 with the workflows through continuous innovation, even though it wasn't broken. We're going to get there with 6. We're going to continuously innovate. So Thomas Edison for that. Fred McGrath is our second, and I'll let you take over.
Dear Fred. Fred was one of our earliest employees, and he was a agency manager, a customer before he was an employee, and he was one of the most fun people I've ever been around. Somebody would call up when he was working for me. Somebody would call up and they would be frustrated. In fact, sometimes they'd be angry. And within 5 minutes, they'd be laughing. And then I'd find out that he didn't even solve their problem because it wasn't solvable, or it was a problem with his computer. But when they left, they were happy because of the fact that how he treated them, he listened to them, he cared for them, and it was just amazing to sit next to his cubicle and listen to him to talk to customers. So we talk about that. That's one of the things that we pride ourselves in, is how our customers get talked to by our customer service people. And I constantly get comments about, "We love your people. We love your people." And a lot of it has to do with the Fred factor, how they're treated. They're not talked down to, and so that's one of the important, really, really important ones for us is the Fred factor in how our people work and play.
I love the question. Has anyone seen Delta Airlines' survey after you get off a support interaction? They ask one question, and that one question is, would you hire that person that you just interacted with? I love that question. If that interaction was so awesome, would you hire them? Right? It cuts through the chase. And that's what Fred is. May not have solved the problem, but that interaction was so wholesome.
Well, and we don't have to always solve the problem, but we use the term of what's her name, Marie?
Oh, Maya Angelou.
Maya Angelou. Yep. She says, they might not remember what you did. They might not remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel.
That quote is in our playbook. That's on our walls. It's on our core values page. If you go to hawksoft.com/values, you'll see it there. It's really summarizes our ethos at HawkSoft and our core values. It's such a powerful quote. Next, number 3 role model for us is a gentleman named Rogelio Morales.
This is a real personal one for my son. My grandson, when he was in middle school, at the end of the year, when he was graduating from middle school of 8th grade, the students were able to nominate and then vote on their person of their
favorite teacher.
Teacher, or I guess they actually did say teacher, and they nominated and voted for the janitor. And my son goes, Jared, what are you guys doing? Is this just throw it in the face of the teachers, something? You're trying to make a point to the teachers or what? And he says, no, Dad, you got to understand. Rogelio would, at lunchtime, he would come and he'd find out what was important to us. He would find out what we're working on. And if we were getting ready for a test, he'd say, oh, hey, don't worry about the mess. You guys go ahead. Yeah, we know you're studying. I'll take care of it. He was involved. He was engaged with those students, and that engagement made a difference in their lives. And that's why they chose him.
One of the questions it was a survey we did almost, I want to say 10 years ago now, to our executive team. If you could summarize in one or 2 words, what the HawkSoft brand stands for, what would you say? And one of the most beautiful answers that we got back was that we care. Rogelio cared enough to redefine his job as not just cleaning up after the kids. He redefined his job as a janitor. It's my job to take care of the kids.
And that goes back to what we just heard from Dr. Ilya. And sometimes it's the simplest things. Like Dr. Ilya said, sometimes it's just a smile. It's to let them know that you care. And as we treat people like that, it does 2 things. It helps them, it lifts them. But guess what? It also helps us. It's that happiness factor. We feel that that person feels valued, and it helps us to feel happy and that we've accomplished something, we've done something important that day.
Our 4th model.
Some of you are going to know our 4th one if you're from California. Chris Lejeune. Okay. Who here knows of Chris Lejeune? Yeah. Dear friend. We lost him a couple years ago to cancer. And but when he came on the sales team, and we had other people. At first he was he was the only salesman, and then we added 2 salesmen. Linda Anderson, I know a lot of you know Linda Anderson, and when we added to the other 2 sales team, he worked with them, and our sales team is not a cutthroat team. They don't compete with each other. They help each other. They work with each other because of what Chris did and how he mentored them, how he worked with them, how somebody would have a bad day or they would be sick, and he'd say, "Oh, you've got a demo today? I'll take that for you." But they still got the sale. Just the team effort, the team spirit that he brought was just amazing.
Very infectious. And in fact, we have this saying in the marketing and sales department at HawkSoft: we are okay losing the sale if we win the relationship. Because that magically has a way of boomeranging back at some point in the future. And we credit a lot of that mindset, that philosophy, to Chris Lejeune, and we miss him very dearly. So we use real people as role models to answer this question, how we behave. And if you look at the next question on the survey, I think it asks that, are there 3, 4, 5 people off the top of your head that you would use as role models? It makes it more tangible for your employees instead of talking only about theoretical things.
You know, the stories are so important, and I know that every one of your agency has a story. How you started, or whatever, you know, or what's important to you. Those stories, if you use those stories to instill that in your employees, but then also tell the stories. Tell the stories to your customers. Tell your story. That's will make a better connection with them than anything I can think of. I mean, and here, who here has read the HawkSoft story? Few of you have, yeah. I suggest you go in and read the HawkSoft story. My son, we've got time, I'm gonna tell it, because not many people here have heard it. HawkSoft story. My son, when he was in 5th grade, his teacher called me and said, "Mr. Hawkins, we have a problem with your son." "What'd he do?" Oh, nothing wrong. He didn't do anything wrong, but he was doing his work upside down, left-handed. "I think he's bored." And he says, "But I got an idea for you." Now this is 1982, I think, Carol, right? 81, 82, 81, I think it was. Anyway, and so he says, you know, computers, just very few people had computers. He says, I could see him having a computer because he's just a brilliant kid, but I don't want to be him bored. We lose our best students from boredom. And he says, could you see fit to buy him a computer? So I went to Radio Shack and bought him a Tandy 1000. And he and I learned to program together. I got it home, putting it together, flipped on the switch, nothing happened. Nothing happened. No lights came on, it didn't blink, it didn't do nothing. Somebody told me not to buy that Radio Shack junk. So I grabbed the box, I'm gonna put it back in the box, and my daughter right there said, "Daddy, you might wanna plug it in." So that's how we got our start. And we started learning how to program. The teacher says, don't buy any software, here's a book. And we started reading that book, and he would teach me something, and when I'd come home from work, "Oh, Dad, I learned this here." And then I'd stay up late, and I'd teach him something the next day, and I teasingly say that my son and I grew up together. and we taught each other programming. And then in 8th grade, I became a warehouse manager, and I worked for a company that brought in cheeses from all over the world: Greece, Italy, England, Germany, Wisconsin. It's another, someplace in the world there. And we had a 20,000 square foot cooler, 5 pallets high, and we'd bring in 20 pallets of brie from France at a time. And every once in a while, one of those pallets of brie would get not used in the right order, and it would go bad. And I said, Sean, I've got another project. We were always in programming. We were always, because of programming. I mean, the first little program he wrote was a little hangman program. And then his mom wanted a recipe program. She wanted a genealogy program, a check register. So we were always looking for projects. And Sean, I got another project. This is what's going on. Oh, yeah, Dad. Now he's in 8th grade. Oh, yeah, Dad. We can do this and this and this. Anyway, he wrote most of the program because I was working silly long hours. We took it to when he got done, took it to my boss. Now he's just getting to freshman year, beginning of freshman year when that happened. I took that in, and my boss was just ecstatic. He had gone out and had a quote to have that software written, and it was too expensive. They couldn't afford it. And he says, but your program even does more than what we were looking for. And he gave me a sizable check. I took it home to my son, showed it to my son. My son, I still remember, his eyes got great big. Dad, someday we're going to have our own company. We're going to be partners in our own business, and we're going to call it HawkSoft. Right after that, I became an insurance agent, and the rest is history. And that's our story. But I know that you guys have stories too. You guys have stories that are just important.
We've been programmed for generations to pass information down through stories, right? It's very natural. That's why I asked this gentleman why it worked, because it's emotional. It hooks the emotional side of your brain, not just the logical side. Next, one of the final questions we ask is, what values matter the most to us? HawkSoft has a set of 8 core values that we've refined over the years. They've changed. Some of these core values, we decided we want to reword them. We want to add to these.
In fact, one of them that we changed pretty early on is we said, we follow all the rules. And then we came up with some things where, what's a dumb rule? No, let's do the right thing. That became, let's do the right thing. Because sometimes a rule needs to be broken.
Let me give you an example, a practical example of this. 2018, we had one of the worst cyber attacks of our history. How many of you were customers in 2018 and remember that? Remember that? Yeah. We remember that too. So we were hit by a foreign actor. You guys know the story. And I think that's when we changed our core value. If we had followed do the right thing, if you look at
follow the rules, we
follow the rules. If you look at our agreement with our agencies, the terms and conditions, we don't require a term like a 1-year term or a 5-year term. It's a 30-day term. An agency can get up, give us 30-day notice, and they can be off to wherever they want. The flip side of that coin is there's no credits to be given because you're only on a 30-day, quote, agreement term. So if we followed the rules, we would have never given a credit to our agencies. But it was at that time that we felt being down for a week in some cases, some people got back up in 3 days. We decided we had to break the rules there and give folks a credit. That credit was that was close to $500,000.
$750,000.
But it just didn't feel right. And so these core values, these are the stories we tell. We're virtue signaling to our employees what matters. We're virtue signaling that these are core values that we inform our business decisions. We're making decisions based on this. It's not just words on a wall. And one of the things I like to say is, how many agency principals in this room? You guys are the CEOs of your organizations. But I challenge you, turn CEO from Chief Executive Officer to Chief Example Officer. Live these core values. Use them to inform your decisions. Praise your employees when they go out of their way to live these core values and to exemplify that in everyday things. Be the example you want them to be. And what results is 30 years of growth, yet the same core principles, the same values, the same fundamental concept that we care. So the next question is about your core values. And I challenge you, try to limit them to maybe 5, maybe 6, because with every value you put down, you're prioritizing what may not matter as much. I've seen companies that have 10, 15 values. It just gets hodgepodge at that point. Everything matters at that point. Challenge yourself to focus in on what things matter most. It's okay to change them later. We've changed ours. Mm-hmm. Perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's a living document, is what it is. It's you've got to what matters now in where you're at in your growth in your company, and now you're going to be able to fine tune it and okay, how do we grow more? How do we get better? How do we live better?
One of our core values is continuous innovation, which Paul talked about. Even if it's not broke, let's go try to fix it. Well, that applies to our core values too. We will continuously innovate on our core values. And if we feel one's not right, we'll change it.
So I hope that this has spurred some thoughts for you guys, especially you guys and it is, we have a big agency or a small agency. Now, when we didn't have these set of core values when we first started. Yeah, we did right here. Okay. We knew what was important to us, but it wasn't until we were in the new office, I think it was about 15 years ago, we finally wrote them down. We developed different groups in the company and said, what are our core values? What are we living by? What matters to us? And then they helped develop them and got the words down and stuff. And like Rushang said, you can go to our page, go to values, our webpage, go to values, and you can find our core values. But that has, in doing that, in having that the employees go through that process, that was very, very meaningful also. So,
thank you guys. Thanks for joining us. Yeah.
Thank you for watching today's episode. Click the episode description below to learn more about our guests and to view the latest podcast episode, as well as other content from HawkSoft. We appreciate you watching and hope you join us next time on the Insurance Perspectives Podcast. Thank you.